Let's dive right in. Today, we're unpacking an explainer on something that literally affects every single one of us every single day. We're looking at some groundbreaking insights from author Ivana Song, specifically about the biological glitches that drive our daily stress and anxiety. You know that feeling when your own mind feels like your absolute worst critic? Well, today, we're going to figure out exactly why that happens, and more importantly, how you can actually take back control.
So think about this for a second. Have you ever let one tiny, almost insignificant mistake completely ruin a perfectly good day? Like maybe you send an email to your boss with a typo, or you stumble over your words in a meeting, and bam, your entire afternoon is totally derailed. You just feel awful. Why does that happen? Well, it happens because our brains are, fundamentally, these overzealous storytellers. They absolutely love taking one tiny data point and spinning it into a massive, dramatic narrative. You see, our brains are constantly hit with this overwhelming tsunami of information, and to process it all efficiently, the brain relies on rapid mental shortcuts. It does this to save energy and, crucially, to predict the future. And hey, most of the time, this is actually incredibly helpful. It's what lets you safely cross a busy street without having to calculate the velocity of every single car. But this rapid-fire prediction software becomes a really big problem when it starts creating a totally distorted reality.
Okay, let's dive into what's actually going on here. What we're really talking about is a cognitive distortion. Basically, this is the brain's attempt to make sense of a complex world using our past experiences, our deep-seated assumptions, and our expectations. The catch? Because it's operating super fast and using these biased filters, it often paints a completely distorted picture of reality. It's kind of like looking into a funhouse mirror and genuinely believing that's what you actually look like.
And this brings us to a really powerful insight from Ivana Song. She says, the challenge begins when we start treating those interpretations as facts. This right here, this is the root of so much of our daily frustration. The thing that's making us anxious usually isn't the event itself. It's this dangerous, automatic habit we have of treating our brain's highly subjective interpretations as objective, undeniable truths.
Section 1. The Overgeneralization Trap. When one experience becomes the future.
We have literally all been here. You walk out of a disappointing job interview, and instantly your brain is like, well, I'm never going to find the right role. Or you have one minor misunderstanding with your partner, and suddenly it's, healthy relationships are just impossible for me. Make a tiny mistake in a presentation, clearly public speaking just isn't for you. Our brains take this single isolated setback and just blur the lines until it feels like a permanent life sentence.
This happens because, as we mentioned earlier, prediction is a core function of the brain. It's constantly looking at the past to estimate what's coming next, simply to keep us alive. But when the brain starts treating a single isolated disappointment as an ironclad forecast, when that prediction crosses the line into pure fiction, it just leaves us feeling totally helpless. We start acting like the future is already written, when in reality, one bad experience tells us way less about our future than our overzealous brains want us to believe.
Section 2. The price of perfectionism. Why it rarely leads to satisfaction.
Now let's look at all-or-nothing thinking. This operates with absolutely zero room for nuance. In a perfectionist reality, you are either a 100% success or you are a total failure. A day is either flawlessly productive or it's a complete waste. Our brains love stripping away the gray area to create these absolute categories because, again, it saves energy. Black and white is just easier to process. But come on, life rarely operates in absolutes, right?
Because of this super rigid mindset, imagine someone achieves 80% of a really difficult goal. Objectively, that is fantastic, yet they feel like they accomplished absolutely nothing. In this state, being satisfied is mathematically impossible. When absolute perfection is the only acceptable standard, basically every single outcome leaves room for self-criticism. And honestly, this is exactly why so many highly capable people achieve incredible things but still completely struggle to feel satisfied with their lives.
Section 3. Filtering out the positive, seeing only evidence that supports the story.
Keep in mind, our attention is a strictly limited resource. Imagine giving a presentation and getting 10 amazing positive comments. But there's just one tiny piece of criticism. What happens? Your brain spends the entire rest of the day, maybe even the whole week, obsessing over that one single negative remark. A negativity filter completely hijacks your attention. It makes you hyper-focus on what's wrong while completely ignoring everything that's working beautifully. And this often escalates into what psychologists call discounting the positive. This is wild. It's where your brain actively dismisses your own accomplishments,
just to protect its existing negative self-image. Have you ever gotten a genuine compliment and just brushed it off, thinking, oh, they're just being nice? Or you achieve a massive success and convince yourself, I just got lucky. New experiences rarely change our self-image because the brain is incredibly stubborn. It will automatically downplay your strengths just to keep that old, familiar, negative story intact.
Section 4. Jumping to conclusions. How the brain fills in missing information. Jumping to conclusions usually shows up in two incredibly common ways. First up is mind reading. This is when you get a brief one-word text reply or maybe just a few hours of radio silence and your brain instantly assumes you know exactly what the other person is thinking about you. Second is fortune telling. That's when you act like you already know exactly how a situation will play out, like deciding you're going to completely bomb an interview before you've even put on your suit. In both cases, we totally forget how much factual information is actually missing.
So why do we do this? Simple. The human brain absolutely despises uncertainty. It hates a vacuum of information. So it naturally tries to fill those gaps with literally whatever explanations it can conjure up. We have to constantly remind ourselves that in these moments of uncertainty, we're usually just listening to a highly skilled fictional interpretation from our own minds, not an objective account of reality.
Section 5. Finding the space between. Distinguishing facts from interpretations.
So, the big question, how do we actually fix this? Let's walk through an incredibly empowering daily practice. Here is your actionable sequence. Step 1, you experience an event. Step 2, you recognize your brain's automatic, distorted interpretation of that event. Step 3, and honestly, this is the magic step, you pause in the space between the thought and your reaction. And finally, Step 4, you consciously choose to respond only to the objective facts of the situation, not the fictional story your brain just spun. You're basically catching your brain's outdated software right in the act.
Going back to Ivana's song, she notes, the goal is to recognize the moment when we begin treating an interpretation as a fact. I really want to emphasize this. The goal here is not to completely banish negative thoughts or force some kind of toxic positivity. That's literally impossible. Cognitive distortions are just part of being human. The goal is simply to stop accepting those thoughts as absolute, undeniable truth. When you actually master this pause, the tangible benefits to your daily life are huge. By creating that space, you aren't just doing some abstract psychological exercise. You are unlocking greater mental clarity. You start making better, far more rational decisions because you're acting on actual facts, not fears. And you build significantly stronger emotional regulation. It puts you firmly back in the driver's seat of your own well-being. I want to leave you with this final thought to carry with you right now. What is the very next story your brain will try to tell you today? And more importantly, when it tells you that story, is it actually a fact? Challenge your overzealous storyteller today. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep asking those big questions, and we'll see you next time.